Welcome to the Calm Cockpit Podcast, the show that helps pilots think clearly, stay calm, and perform at their best when it matters most. Each episode delivers practical strategies, real-world aviation wisdom, and mindset tools that help create confident pilots and safe flights.
Every pilot remembers their first and second and sometimes even third check ride, and most pilots have dreamed of sitting across from a designated pilot examiner and asking, "What are you really looking for?"
Today on the show, DPE Chris Anderson joins us to pull back the curtain on what examiners are actually looking for.
We'll also dig into the trends the DPEs are seeing in today's pilot applicants, from rising anxiety and perfectionism to growing pressure younger pilots are carrying into the cockpit.
Together, we'll pick apart check ride stress, nervous system regulation, the psychology of choking under pressure, and the mental tools pilots can use to stay calm when it feels like everything is on the line.
The Calm Cockpit Podcast starts now.
Onyx 1-2 Mike Oscar, runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. I'm Geeta Brown, licensed yoga and meditation educator and music educator with over 30 years of experience of teaching high performers how to improve their lives and their performance, but of course, without adding stress. And I'm also a midlife student pilot.
And I'm John Niehaus, corporate pilot and flight instructor.
This episode is so timely because just yesterday, I took a flight with my flight instructor and he said, "Hey, after we fly this weekend, we're going to go to this pancake breakfast. It'll be great. We're going to hop on the phone and we're going to call the pilot examiner and schedule your check ride." And immediately my heart rate went up like 100 beats per minute. And I'm right in the mix of the fun pressure of that final funnel to check ride. And what I think is so cool is that Chris reached out to us about check ride anxiety and stress. He said, "Oh, I heard that episode you recorded, Geeta. It was back on Thursday, October 6, 2025. I will link that episode in the show notes below. But it was a bonus of training the mind, a guided meditation for focus and clarity." And he was like, "Oh, there's this nice music under it, and it was very relaxing. And I was thinking that this could really help our applicants." But John, you've known Chris for kind of a while, right?
Yeah, I met Chris while I was working for the National Association of Flight Instructors, so it's hard to believe that I've known him for, 15 years now, which is crazy. He's been one of the more prolific designated pilot examiners in the Midwest for years. You'll hear in his bio, we talk about it a little bit in the interview, but he's a former master instructor with NAFI, and he just really knows all there is to know about flight education, flight instruction, and being a designated pilot examiner. At some point, I had told him when we first started this that I was going to drag him, willing or unwilling, onto this podcast, and he just needed to come up with an idea of what he wanted to talk about. And so, like you said, back when that episode aired, he called me and was like, I think it's to a point now where the anxiety for applicants is tipped and we need to try something different. So it's kind of cool to not just be the catalyst to inspire something like this, but then also have an examiner who's willing to give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, I really applaud him for that. And it sort of ended up in this cool collaboration that you guys will hear in the interview, where he really will pick apart check rides from his point of view as a designated pilot examiner. But we also kind of end up brainstorming together in like the second half of the interview about ways that we can help this sort of boom in check ride anxiety that he and his fellow DPEs are seeing. I don't want to waste any more time because the interview is great, but I do want to give you his little short bio that he gave us, which encapsulates how much experience he has. So he's a DPE, a corporate pilot, as John said, a 12-time NAFI Master Certified Flight Instructor. He's based in Janesville, Wisconsin, close to my old stomping grounds in the Midwest. And he's got more than 23,000 flight hours. That's a jaw-dropping amount. And he's been an examiner for more than 20 years. And this number astounds me. He has conducted over 3,500 practical tests. I'm sweating one practical test. He's conducted 3,500, including both fixed wing and helicopter. He's flown charter, corporate, airline operations, and is also the author of the Multi-Engine Flight Training guide. You will hear his vast experience in this. What I love about him is he is an active learner too. He came on the show wanting to learn as much as he was going to share, and I think that's really remarkable. So enjoy this interview with Chris. As usual, John and I will meet you on the other side for a little wrap up, and we'll also give you a little more info on the bonus episodes we sort of created with Chris's guidance that we hope will help people in their preparation towards Checkride and improving your performance under pressure. So lean on in for a great conversation. And after this, you may never look at a Checkride in the same way again.
Chris Anderson, welcome to the Calm Cockpit. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, John.
The list is endless of the contributions that you've made to the aviation community. And of course, thank you for all that you've done for that. When we started talking about having you on and what we would talk about, I mean, it was kind of hard to narrow things down. But obviously, with your experience as a DPE, the choice is easy because what stresses people out more in aviation than the threat of a looming check ride, right?
Yes.
And it
Everybody
seems,
gets nervous.
no matter how many you take, it still doesn't really go away. I know some people pretend like it gets easier, but for me, it's like that stress goes up each time I have to go back and do it again.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I get nervous with each check ride that I take on various levels. And, sometimes I'm calm and cool as a cucumber. And my next check ride, which maybe a month or so away, I get there and I go, why am I stressing out over this? And, there's a little bit of self-talk in there. I get down off my perch. And sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. Sometimes it's the fear of, really wanting to excel because I've worked so hard towards it. But as you do more of them, you get to a level of expectation for yourself. So we recognize it. And taking this back to the DPE side of stuff, we were in that applicant's shoes as well, whether it's the sport or a private pilot's license, where this is the first time you've seen us, and fear of the unknown and any sort of rumors. And if you get out there on the internet, we're all henchmen, born to fail you, tattooed on us. A friend of mine's got a name of Inspector Pink Slip. He works for the FAA, or he's retired now, but that was his nickname. And even early on, I got the nickname from one of my students. Her name's Lori. She started calling me the Terminator for no reason. And she's taken numerous check rides with me, and she's always done well.
We had a guy when I was at SkyWest for the airlines, and he was called the Terminator, and he earned it.
Oh, no.
There were more non-passes with this particular gentleman than any of the other examiners that the airline had. And so folks, even at the airlines, even when you're getting type ratings and whatever career path you decide to take, like we still have the same kind of fears that Geeta, you might have leading into your impending private pilot check ride, which will go fine, by the way.
Thank you. I'm feeling nervous just talking about it. I can feel my heart beating a little faster. It's amazing how the mind works when we care about something, how the pressure comes just talking about it.
Yeah.
So
I think your key point is your care.
Yeah. See?
If you were on the other side of that, would that be even right?
Yeah. Good point. May not feel good, but we know it's pointing to a good thing.
I completely agree. And I want to get back to that point. But before we get there, as a way of easing ourselves into the idea of check rides, let's talk about examiners. Chris, examiners are human too, right? You guys are pilots. You enjoy flying. You eat hot dogs and apple pie on 4th of July. And, like you're regular people, right?
Yeah, we're very versed in hot dogs and your go-to food, pizza somewhere, or you're into that big Mexican place, right? But, yeah.
Always.
So, the thing that people, and maybe even some examiners forget, that we all started on the other side of the desk. We all sat there waiting for our first check ride. And I can remember my first check ride. I actually had to fly to a different airport that I hadn't been to before. And Field Maury was the examiner. And Field's this tall guy. And when you're 17 years old in 2 weeks, this guy's a tower of a guy with a reputation. And I just looked at that. It was like looking up at a mountain going, oh, no. Field was very good. at doing what he was doing and setting you down and figuring out what you knew. And I try to stress is, I bet on your side of the desk. You don't have to do 100%. Just like passing your written test, 70 is passing and 100% is passing. We want you to succeed and get this license. Hopefully we still have a heart and we're not jaded. That was something I told myself when I first became a DPE a long time ago, was not to get jaded in this, because you knew some of those examiners, the old crusty guys that walked in, and if you didn't know how many rivets were in the left wing of the 172, you were done for. And then they go off and complain he doesn't know his aircraft systems because he doesn't know how many rivets are in the left wing. And that's not where I wanted to be. And as time went on, you got to remind yourself that, okay, training has changed and people have changed, but we all have a common goal to get you to fly safely in the air. And that's the key point to that. We're not here to fail you. That's not our job. We're just double checking what the flight instructor has said. You're ready to go. Let's go see Chris or whoever they're using for an examiner, verify what they've done, and be on your merry way. That's to me how I kind of look at it, and it's tough. I know it's reputation. All you got to do is spend 10 minutes on the internet anywhere, and you'll find lots of lines bashing that we're all out for the money, whatever the case may be. To me, that's bothersome because we're not that way. We're definitely not.
Yeah, I think that people forget that, like you said, just like an instructor wants you to be safe, they're training you to a certain skill level to kind of protect yourself from yourself in some cases. To an extent, an examiner is doing the same thing, right? Like if you were to just give somebody a certificate that they don't deserve, the risk is that person feels confident when maybe they shouldn't and goes and does something that is going to hurt themselves or someone else, right? Like there's a lot of responsibility on the examiner side to protect you as the student.
Yeah. The last thing we want to hear at all is one of our applicants has been involved in any sort of accident or incident. The FAA watches us too. You know, they keep track if there's an accident, especially on somebody who's been issued a certificate in the last couple of years, that they're going to go back and talk to the examiner and the instructor about it. And you put the ACS and the FAA side around, we're all human. We don't want to see anybody get hurt, period, no matter what it is. You know, so that's always in our mind, probably foremost. Is this guy safe? Is he meeting the standards? You know, when we're signing that ticket, yes, we're ascending to that. One thing that people or the FAA actually preaches is, would you put your family with that individual? You know, that's kind of good judgment. And that's kind of a question I'll ask at an end of a check ride. Like, who's going to be your first passenger? Now, that's changed over the years a little bit. Some would say, oh, it's going to be mom, it's going to be dad, it's going to be grandma. It's some close relative to them. And, you know, that's important. Everybody can relate to, okay, you're getting your driver's license, but now you're getting a pilot's license. Well, I think the responsibility of having a car, now you're operating in a much different environment, but the safety aspects of it are just as critical.
It's interesting, you know, the build up to a check ride can sometimes be worse than the check ride itself.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
know as a student, and of course as an instructor, kind of observing my students, I definitely was guilty of hitting that sort of check ride plateau where it was like, oh, hey, I think you're getting ready for a check ride. And I go, really? And then it was almost like a switch would turn and I would just start sabotaging myself to avoid taking a check ride a little bit longer. And for anyone who's listened, I know I've talked about this before, but even now, like I'll go to recurrent and like the first 2 days of recurrent, it's like perfection. Love it. I'm so proud of myself. And then like that day right before the last day, whether there's a check ride or not, it's like, I don't deserve to be sitting in this seat. And then thankfully it all kind of works itself out. But like, even again, as I've said, even now, like I still kind of feel that extra tension. And in my head, there's still that little bit that starts to backpedal the second that you start muttering the word check ride. Like I'm sure you see that all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So a couple things, even as my time as an instructor, I don't do much primary training anymore. But when they do, you can see right when they're getting close to their check ride, there's this plateau and regression. And so you try to time that as an instructor to go, I know this is going to happen. So, okay, they've hit bottom. You can kind of see them going, I'm never going to do this. And then you're going to go, I'm scheduling the check ride. And they're going, you can see the little, no. But they'll start rebounding out of that, a little bit of self-confidence issues and, am I really ready? But the thing that I've seen over the years and recently within the last probably 18 months, if I think about it, maybe going back as far as 2 months, the stress on a check ride when I walk into a room is huge. You can taste it. You can see it. I've used that example of walking into a smoke-filled room. It's oh no for me because I realize the level that they put themselves on. And then you got to spend some time to back them away from that shelf, kind of bring them down to get that heart rate down, to get that anxiety down. Just you recognize it right away. And then you talk and you can tell. I had a recent applicant, young lady, very smart, but she was speaking with wind gust 35 to 45. I'm like, okay. I mean, just very, very quickly. And that to me was a big sign of stress. Just da-da-da, da-da-da. Okay. A couple of years ago, I had an individual show up, park the airplane. I was waiting for him at the FBO, ran by me, said, excuse me, and went off into the bathroom, came back and introduced. We're just out in front of the FBO, just chit-chatting away. She goes, excuse me, runs down to the bathroom and came back. Uh-oh, what's going on? And she comes back and I'm like, you okay? She goes, I'm fine, but I get so stressed out with these, I throw up. Okay. Do you want to do this? Because if you're not feeling well, she goes, no, I'm just like this. I did this before my first solo too. Oh, but as we talked, she finally came around, was drinking some water, had a little bit of thing. Her color returned to her face, did fine through the oral. And then we got to the airplane, things were going fine. And this was back in the day when people were still using paper maps and a cross-country form. And we get into the 150. I close my door. And just as she closes her door, the map and her cross-country flight plan go out the door. And it's 10 knot winds. And I just see everything fade. And she jumps out of the airplane, dashing across the ramp. And then oh no, here we go. And she comes back just shaking. Can we take a break? But that's the kind of level that I'm seeing. And it's just that level has increased more and more. There's certain aspects that, like I said, the bigger schools, some of the college programs that I'm not sure if it's within the particular school or if it's the instructor. There's commonalities here. I think there's all the above. You have to pass this check ride or your career's over with. If you get this wrong, you're going to fail this check ride. If you so much as sneeze, you're done with. And that's not the case. But the pressure's been built up somehow. Maybe it's a financial obligation. If I fail this thing, I got to spend this much more to get it done. And it's concerning. I talked to some of the other examiners, and it's not just me seeing it. To me, I'm like, there's got to be something we could do to bring this level down so I can actually see the true performance out of an individual. And hopefully they don't self-sabotage somewhere through that check ride and their fears have actually become reality. And that's where I really want to go. And how can we bring this back down?
I mean, I understand in my heart why a lot of people are probably stressed out right now, especially from a collegiate standpoint. I mean, check rides are stressful, whether you're doing it for fun or whether you're going to do it as a career. But to put my career hat on, I mean, I know from my perspective, when I was going through it, the financial aspect weighs very, very heavily. Not just the idea of, okay, if I bust this, I have to do more training. But, there is this air of, oh my God, if I don't get through this, especially on the first try, I'm not going to get hired by an airline. All the money that I have put into this career so far, tens of thousands of dollars out the window. And now I'm going to be an accountant, no offense to accountants, but that's how I always looked at it. And we did a episode that aired before this one all about failure. And I talked about my own experience having failed a check ride and just the weight of that. and it did carry with me. So, I understand where people are coming from on this. There's just this giant ball of weight when it comes to how much you care about what you're doing and how much you want to do it for a living that I think just people feel from the moment they step in that room.
I can get that. definitely a feel of failure. And I'm trying to relate back to my experience. When I was working on my private certificate, I took my knowledge test, the private knowledge test, I think 3, if not 4 times before I actually passed it with a 72. And, back then we used Scantron. So you went in, you took the test, and you didn't hear back for 2 to 4 weeks before you found out that in Chris's case, he failed. Back, study some more. The story I tell, when I went in, I think for the 4th time, the test proctor's name was Mary Mills. And I'd walk in and she'd go, "Hey, Chris, how you doing?" "Pretty good." She goes, "What you here for today?" I said, "Private pilot." She goes, "Oh, Chris." But it never really deterred me. The same thing happened, or similar thing happened on my instrument. I failed that twice. The commercial was the first knowledge test that I passed, but it never deterred me like, oh, this is going to hold me back. I shouldn't do this. And I don't know if people are different these days, or that mentality is you got to do this right. You got to get 100%, or you're nobody. To me, I look back and go, yeah, I screwed it up. Go back, do it again. And I just persevered. I don't remember myself being, maybe this isn't cut out for me. Is that just me? No, I don't think so. Otherwise, people wouldn't. Well, look at you. You failed a check ride. Where are you today? You're in a pretty darn good spot. So am I. Nobody's come knocking on their door and go, "I don't know if you can go around that thunderstorm. You failed your private pilot knowledge test 22 years ago. You cut out for this?" We actually learn more through failure than we do by success. It's like at the end of the check ride when you hear "good job." Hey, good job, but what did you learn from the check ride? Well, I did everything. I met standards. Good examiner, a good instructor will have a few tidbits in there to go, you can make some improvements here. But when you fail something, you know that that's the impact on it and go, okay, I need to focus on this and maybe some other things to bring me up. It's very rare that I outright see somebody who is not able to be a pilot or shouldn't be taking a check ride.
One of the things that I have seen, because I do a lot of outreach and mentorship through my alma mater, and I do it through the company that I work for. We actually kind of created a little outreach position, and I am privileged to be a part of that. Having gone back to the university and talked with them and seen the students that are there, and I'm the first to tell you that I'm not qualified to talk about generational differences. That I know for sure. But I can tell you that these kids are so darn smart. And what I've seen in aviation, at least through my little part of the world, is that because of the demand of everybody wanting to be a pilot now, because of the pilot shortage and some of the different things that have gone on with the growth of the industry, the standards for the university have skyrocketed. I make the joke, they wouldn't have accepted me. My GPA was not good. Well, it was good, but it wasn't good enough. I think I graduated high school with a 3.6. And now you can't get into the aviation university unless you are 4-pointing. And then you've got a 4-point in your first semester or first year or whatever to then get a flight slot. I'm not that smart. And so what we're finding through talks with the chiefs at the university is that these are the upper echelon of kids that are flying. And because of how smart they are, maybe they haven't quite hit as many of these stumbling blocks along the way. And you hit a check ride and it's difficult. And maybe it's one of the more difficult things they've encountered. And that is creating this additional ratchet turning up the stress. Are you seeing that at all? I mean, I know you mentioned the larger schools and the university type things. Is that kind of the feeling you're getting?
Yeah, it is, especially at that level. The individuals that are high achieving getting into these programs, are they setting unrealistic expectations? I got to be 100% on this test and not get anything wrong. Therefore, they're overstressed about it. I reached out to a couple of people and asked, what could this be? And some of them did say it very well could be generational. Older people that are doing this for fun are less stressed in general. They'll often tell me that they haven't taken a test, or anything like this since high school or working in college. But again, it's not the same. It's not the same. They want this for different reasons, more so than making it a career, or they're not in that same environment as these other individuals are. If I look back on the last months of check ride, which I've done 15 this month, I would say 10 out of those 15 were of the high stress value right now.
I mean, so much of this we've focused on just the idea of check rides that can be scary, in true calm cockpit style. Let's flip that on its head. And it's kind of like having a pet. They say that having a pet is the greatest joy and sometimes the deepest sorrow at the same time, wrapped up into one. A check ride can be the same thing. When you work so hard for an outcome and you achieve that outcome, it is the greatest joy. God forbid something happens, then there's something to be learned there and some of the things that we've already spoken about. But let's talk about like those that are successful. I want to focus on that for all of our listeners because I think that's what everybody wants to know. How do I pass a check ride? So like you've seen hundreds of applicants. What are some of the things that you see, trends that you see in common with those that are successful? Are there certain things that people do that help them push through all of the things that we just spoke about for the last, however long it's been and achieve that flagpole raising moment?
I think there's three things right off the bat that come off to my mind on what makes a successful candidate. One is the individual themselves. What's their motivation? Where's their heart at? And how they apply themselves working towards this goal. The second thing is the instructor. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you still need somebody to lead that horse to the water. So there's that partnership right there that works together to make a successful candidate. And the third thing that throws in there is some sort of support structure, whether it be the flight school, where there's a group of community in there, where there's support, whether from home, whether it be from the parents, or maybe an EAA chapter or a good, strong mentor. It's actually a joy because they're immersed into this part of aviation. And then, most of this is on the applicant or the pilot themselves. We got to apply this and learn this. That really takes a lot of dedication on their own part. And if they've got a supporting instructor and a supporting, foundation all the way around, that helps bring all that down and they know their stuff. So when we can sit down and we can have this conversation, it actually flows very, very nice. And that flow comes out. Most examiners are scenario driven. One of the scenarios I use for my private pilot is you volunteered for Pilot and Pause to take a fluffy little puppy to its forever home. And people love that little thing. That's fun. It kind of gives. And so, hey, can we do this? And that little scenario in and of itself kind of reduces the stress. And I even carry that into the flight. Hey, the fluffy puppy got out of its cage and is running around the back of the airplane. Really, I can't believe this is happening. But Chris is having fun over there on the right-hand side. And that's what helps, too. A little bit of humor in there, a little bit of the scenario. Going back to your question, I think it's the having a good core foundation underneath that. There's a few things that everybody talks about. Number one, stop studying the night before because you're not going to remember it the next day. The number of times I heard, I just read that last night. I'm like, yeah, I told you not to read that. And have a nice dinner. If you're of age, please don't go out and have a couple of beers. Don't do that. Have a nice, relaxing evening and go to bed. Those are the standard things that I kind of think. But I think there's more to it that we can add to this. And that's one of the things where I came for you guys on this.
Now, I know that you've got some DPE style resiliency questions with Gita, but I'm going to steal that word first because I got one more thing I want to talk to you about before I hand over the control here. In my mind, when I think about somebody who can be successful in a check ride, similar to what you said in a roundabout way, it's the same kinds of skills that can make you good at anything, right? Like it's the same thing that makes you a good student, the same thing that makes you a good employee for a company. It's kind of that overall resiliency of how do I recover from a stumbling block? Not even failure. Let's not even talk about that. It's just recovering from, oops, I said a wrong answer or I said too much. That I was very much guilty of trying to prove that I knew stuff. So I was the applicant who was just word vomiting everything I knew. And then the second my mouth stopped talking, the examiner would be like, I'm going to dig just one more grain of sand out of this hole. And I was already done. Like I had no more left. So one more additional question above what I already told you, there was nothing else. I am so guilty of, and it's happened on more tests and check rides than I care to admit. The first question, I almost always get wrong. Almost always. It's like when I said when we first started recording today, the very beginning is the hardest part. Like I almost feel like I have to get the first one wrong just to break the ice, and then I go,
Sure.
the world's not over. I got one wrong. Let's get the next
Right.
one right. And everything kind of continues on. I've actually never told this story publicly, but it was for my Learjet type rating that I had. And of course, a type rating is a month's worth of training. It's, a whole lot of ground stuff. And then you have a few weeks of sim training. And I sat down with the examiner one-on-one. First one I got wrong. And then he asked me another question, and I kind of put my hands on my face like this. And those that can't see me, I'm kind of cradling my head. And right below my right ear, I found a bump. In my head, I'm like, what is that? What is this? Like all of a sudden, all I could think about was in the middle of this first 10 minutes of a check ride. Now I'm worried I have cancer or any number of other things. And it's like, push past it. Let's keep going. And, thankfully it went okay. And no, I don't have cancer for those that may be wondering, but having those moments of, oh my gosh, what's this bump? I got this question wrong. I just did this maneuver and I was 50 feet high, but I went back to 0 and the examiner didn't say anything. Do I oh my God, no. Crumble that up. Keep going. Do what you need to do. It's figuring out how to go past those little moments where you think the world is falling, but it hasn't fallen yet, right? Like that somehow we need to be teaching that resiliency to everyone. But of course, as instructors, we need to figure out a way to teach that to our students.
I would agree. You're your own worst enemy because you're seeing every little mistake through your eyes. The examiner, you've probably seen those mistakes, but in the big picture, does it matter? Okay, so steep turns. I was off 150 feet. I corrected for it. And then the examiner goes, I noticed you got a little low on that. What happened? I got a little bit too steep, so, I didn't have enough back pressure in there, so I just rolled out, applied a little bit more back pressure, got myself back in. And the examiner's going, perfect. You made an error. That's great. You corrected, and you knew why you had to correct for it. Move on. In the meantime, you're going, I busted because I was 50 feet off on my... Yeah, we get into our own head, and then we don't know how to get ourselves past that. An interesting thing, just had our DPE meeting today. Myself and another examiner, we had very similar experience. We were talking a little bit about this. Both of us recently had applicants where they failed the first maneuver out of the check ride, and it was just blatantly bad. It's the typical thing. Yeah, sorry, we're not meeting the standards and da-da-da. What would you like to do? You can continue or go home. Both of our applicants elected to continue. And then they flew a flawless ride after that. The pressure was off. You can't fail a check ride twice in the same sitting.
I know someone who said that.
Yeah.
That was John.
Did they turn left instead of right? Because that's what I did.
It was a holding pattern. Yes, they did turn the wrong way, and it was a little ugly. But, and the other applicant, the other examiner in his situation, it was a missed approach. They turned too early. And then both of us had the same conclusion at the end during the debrief. We both felt awful issuing a notice of disapproval because of that situation. And they went on to fly a flawless ride. Unfortunately, they were so far out of parameters that, we don't have a choice. We could just go back and restart. But both of them fessed up. Yeah, I screwed that up. Let's move on. Right attitude. There's actually a line from Top Gun, I think. John, you might be able to quote it. It's towards the end of it where, that spin would have shaken up me. The good pilot learns from those mistakes and moves on. And that's very much true. We make errors all the time. There's a time for reflection on that, but there's also a time to complete the task, what we're doing now, and move on, reevaluate later. Yeah.
And a positive attitude gets you through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That really does. That mindset.
So,
you're going to make mistakes throughout your career. Learn from it and move on.
Made a few.
Not every
few.
Not every landing's perfect. You cross a holding fix or an altitude a little bit too high. It's like, okay, what's going on? Let's fix this. You just hope you don't get, hey, we got a phone number for you to call. Usually doesn't happen that way. But most pilots in my experience, are overachievers and perfectionists. So you're constantly self-evaluating, going, how could I do this? The better ones have gone, okay, I'll reevaluate that later. I still got to fly this airplane.
The check ride that didn't go well for me is how I learned that. So they tell you in a job interview or when you're talking about a check ride that, the outcome is an important thing to discuss, but what you learned from that outcome and how it happened and what your sort of own personal debrief of what that was is almost more important. And that's what I tell kids that I am trying to mentor into a role such as mine is like, it's not the end of the world. Discuss what happened. You made a mistake. On very rare occasions is it, that DPE did this thing and, it's his fault. No, it's not. You made a mistake. But what did you learn from it? How did you recover from it? And I learned my left and rights. So I got that going for me. I appreciate all of this. I think that there's a lot of nuggets in here for those that are going to take a check ride or have already and will eventually take another one. I think that just understanding that we're all stressed. You mentioned community, the idea that the community of those of us who are, anxious about check rides, it's a thing and it's okay. It's okay because it is something that you care about and it is something that's important and it is something that keeps you safe. And in most cases, 99.9% of the time, if you trust your CFI and your CFI was a good one, which hopefully they were, the majority are, they wouldn't have recommended you for something if they didn't think you could do it. And that's, in my case, one of the hardest things to remember is just that I worked hard. And whether I believe in myself or not, certainly there's an important piece to that. My instructor believes in me. And if you can't believe in yourself, hold on to that nugget. And I think that'll get you through. Now, as we shift gears here, I know you've got some questions for our resident meditation and yoga expert here. I'm going to pass over the controls. I think that these are some wonderful questions that will help people as they kind of gauge their own sort of introspective, if that's the right word, of where they're going, what they're doing, and what other people are going through.
Sure. I've listened to you guys since day one, and what you guys put out and present is very much in need. And it's something that doesn't get emphasized. And I've told you, John, I've sent you texts or we've talked, what you're doing is cool. And I appreciate that 100%. But what got me going is I was driving to work. I got an hour and 10-minute drive to work. And so that's when I listened to my podcast. And I got a bunch of them. Well, one of Gita's abbreviated one, you're basically bringing yourself into awareness. You had a little bit of some really nice music in the background, and you're talking about just getting your body in alignment and thinking about your breathing, you're in and you're out. The bad news is I was in my truck on my way to work and I'm going, man, this is really relaxing. And you even say, don't be doing this while you're driving. But then it hit me because the following week I had done like 4 check rides, and 3 out of those 4 check rides, stress and the anxiety was through the roof. That got me to thinking, would something like this, bringing yourself into the present, bringing yourself into the mindfulness, the awareness, help with these? Because the stuff that I've learned on your shows, I just went and had my physical last week and I could tell my blood pressure was up. So I'm sitting there in the doctor's office, feet flat on the floor, blood pressure cuffed, hooked up, just relax, inhale, doing that. And it works. It works. I go, there's got to be something here. And so I called John, we got to talk about this. And then, Gita and I talked a little bit, and that's where I want to go. Is there some preparatory stuff that starts a little bit farther out to help bring this down? Recognizing that this may be a trait within you, or even if it's not, and then realizing once I work up to the point and I'm waiting for the Terminator to come knocking through the door with his tattoo, "Born to Fail You" on the thing, to help me bring me back down into the present so I can knock down the heart rate, the cortisol, the blood sugar increase, and all that other stuff so I can perform more realistically to my level of performance. Big question. What can we do?
What can
I do? What can they do?
Just take one slow, deep breath. How about let's do it right now? Take a slow, deep breath in. Hold it at the top. Full emptying exhale. Exhale all the way. Let's do 2 more. Slow, deep breath. Fill it from the bottom to the top. Whatever pace, you don't have to follow mine. And whenever you're ready to exhale, you just do a little slower exhale. Doesn't even have to be slow, just slower. And then your last exhale, think wide and deep. As wide and deep as it wants to be. No forcing it, just allowing that to happen. And when you empty this last one, if you can empty it through the nose, awesome. If not, through the mouth, no worries there. And then when you're done with that last exhale, just sit for just one moment before doing anything else. So I want to normalize something for everybody. Pressure and the stress response is a normal reaction to stress. The body will go into fight, flight, freeze, or flee. And it has nothing to do with your inherent worth as a pilot or your character or that you can do this job or not. It is something that can be trained. It is something that's inherent in us that's built to protect us from threat. That's a good thing. We want that. But the really good thing is that with systematic training, you can change your response to outside stress. What I'm hearing you say, particularly with Gen Z, who has grown up with a high degree of stimulation, not just the smartphone, like the dopamine hit of the endless scroll that I myself am subject to getting locked into. It's more, we're constantly bombarded. And I say I am not a Gen Z. I'm Gen X, baby. But we're bombarded with images of everyone else's success. Right? They're seeing, 25-year-old first officers flying for American Airlines, and they're like, oh, that's got to be me next. They're constantly bombarded. I mean, Chris, when you were taking those exams, you probably weren't bombarded with images of everyone else passing theirs. You were just in your own little bubble doing your own thing. But when you're constantly bombarded with everyone else's success, and then the metrics at the school you're at have raised up for success too, the outsized pressure sort of bubble that people are living in has increased exponentially. And we know we have ample research to show that Gen Z is more anxious and stressed out than previous generations. It's not a character flaw, it's the world they are living in. So to your question, if we're coming then into a pressure-filled situation and our pressure, say on a scale of 1 to 10, we're living at a 6 just because of we're in college and we want to get the job and we're already type A and we need to be perfect at everything. And then you throw that Checkride pressure in, then you're up to a level 10. And that's where the fight, flight, freeze, or flee response, where your sympathetic nervous system has now taken over, it's gone. Your cognitive reasoning at that point shuts down because your body is trying to protect you from an imminent threat. So the question then becomes, what is going on? I'm speaking to you at the universities. What is going on? Why are we not doing mental performance training for these students? Why is this not part of flight training curriculum? I try to say it. I think every episode I try to say the word meditation. And then like every third or fourth episode, I try to call out like the flight training community and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're expecting to train technique and performance and drilling maneuvers of push this, pull that, think this way, read that plate. That's great. But there is a very highly complex brain and physical organism that responds in measurable and observable ways to external stressors. And it needs to be trained just as much as the push, pull, click, say, and do all the things. So in the absence of revamping all of the curriculum everywhere in this one episode, the mental performance training and the training for us to handle this Checkride pressure, there's a lot that we can do as individuals. So the first thing I would say is to understand that pressure will almost always degrade performance. They talk a lot about athletes who like rise under pressure. And what the studies show consistently is that they're not actually rising under pressure. It's that their skills are staying the same while everyone else around them, their skills are degrading. So what can we learn from these athletes? They've done some cool studies where they looked at what's happening to the brains of like the best golfers, who do these amazing putts under pressure. The putt is worth like $5 million. And the ones who were choking, the pressure raised their self-consciousness to such a level that the things that they were normally able to do on autopilot, their brain was now narrating and saying, put your finger here, too much pressure there, just like you guys were describing. You start getting in your own head. And they started narrating skills that should have been automated. And then they said, okay, we all know this is a problem, right? You guys said it, we get in our own head. So then they said, okay, what are the studies and what can we do to reverse that process? And it was a process of gradually introducing the pressure of being watched while you perform was one of the only ways to get over that. Because what happens is we tend to think, us perfectionists or recovered perfectionists like me, I'm not always recovered, but sometimes I am, is that we tend to think that more work and more study and more training is just going to make it better. But the weird thing about a check ride is you're doing something with the Terminator sitting next to you watching you do it. And that's the pressure piece that makes the skill degrade. So when we're training, we need to have regular times where we are being watched and observed, whether it's a GoPro recording you that you know someone's going to watch later, or you're flying with a friend and I say, I want you to sit there and look stern, or do it like what we do in music. We do a lot of mock this, mock that, walk into a room and have everyone staring at you. Need to induce that feeling of being watched so you can perform under pressure and still access those unconscious skills. And here's where the thing comes in where you say, how can we do this more right away? Is systematically then adding in things, which I can get into more detail. And I think we're going to do some bonus episodes on so people can actually practice this. But adding in breathing practices, adding in like what you were talking about, a systematic 5-point reset of just the physical posture so that you're organizing your body in a way that signifies to your nervous system that it's okay to shift out of that fight or flight mode. Practicing those outside of the pressure-filled moment for 5 or 10 minutes a day till you feel that those are like, you kind of own them. You can just do them automatically without really thinking about it. You get a short breathing practice going. You get a short, just little posture reset going. Once that's automatic, then you add that into when you're studying book learning, because that's relatively lower pressure. Do that a little bit while I'm studying. Then you bring it into maybe a more fun flight or a training flight. Just first thing before I hit go, or, before whatever the first action you would do before I put on the headphones, I just do a 30-second, just little centering. And you gradually keep weaving that into your practice until you find a flow for yourself that works. Maybe it's before every maneuver. It's just one deep breath, or just feeling the feet on the floor, or even just wiggling the toes, where it's so ingrained that it's become a part of your standard operating procedure that, like for me, I know when I release my hips, automatically my whole body goes into alignment because I've practiced that. It's like a trigger then for my nervous system to shift out of that fight or flight, or at least dial it down a little bit so I can still manage my executive function and do what I need to do. So the answer is to slowly and progressively have things outside of aviation that you're training. I recommend breath and a body scan because it's easy, portable. You can do it anywhere. No one even has to know you're doing it. It's totally accessible. And then slowly introduce that into the training and slowly add the pressure situations where you're just doing little sprinkles of that. And gradually over time, your default setting then goes from, instead of full freak out, to at least manageable, because we don't want to be totally thinking that we have to be so relaxed and chill. Like, that's not the state you want to be in. You want to be a little focused, a little edge, a little like ready to go. So we don't want limp noodles, flying around as I'm so relaxed. This is just totally fine. That's not realistic. It's a little shorthand way to dial down the environmental stress bubble that I'm saying people are finding themselves in, because you're doing little things daily to dial down your stress response, and then systematically practicing that under pressure so that it becomes a skill you can access. There are no shortcuts, people. People say, what do I do when I'm having a helmet fire? I'm like, well, whatever you have been training yourself to do is what is going to happen. So it's not a fix-all. You have to take responsibility for your responses to things. And quite honestly, if anyone is listening and they're an instructor or you're teaching in the collegiate environment, please consider doing these types of things, or follow Tammy Barlett, who does amazing mental performance training, because it's doing our kids a disservice to set them up to fail without acknowledging that they're stressed. They're not being trained in how to manage that. It's normal to be stressed. It's not normal to just ignore it and pretend like it's not happening and that you should just grit through it, because that doesn't work. Eventually it comes bursting out. That was a long answer, but I hope succinct enough that we can kind of move from there.
Actually, I like that. And you just rephrased right at the end, for my understanding. So a gradual increase in the pressure while learning these, what's the word to use? Awareness techniques or relaxation techniques.
A lot of times it's nervous system regulation. quite honestly. Because what we're experiencing when we have that like choking under pressure, or we have that extreme fight or flight, or like John saying that hyperfixation on, oh my God, there's something on my jaw. What is that? And the brain is just running. We all have a wonderful nervous system. Ordinarily right now, primarily the parasympathetic nervous system is functioning, which is responsible for resting, digesting, sort of casual, just beingness, right? Hanging out. When we are in that fight, flight, freeze, or flee, wow, that's a mouthful. When we're in that response, that is what, dials up the heart rate, the blood pressure goes. We have this whole cascade of neurochemicals that happen, cortisol spikes, the quote unquote stress hormone. Lots of things happen that make it incredibly difficult for our executive functioning to happen. When we do things like, let's just take the slow, deep breath, for example, that slow, long exhale, it's not just like feel good moment. It actually has a biological mechanism that it stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the largest cranial nerve. It goes from the brainstem all the way down through the throat, all the way down to the diaphragm, which is the big, thick muscle that connects on the bottom of the ribs and also innervates lots of other areas in the nervous system. When that vagus nerve is activated through that long exhale, you know how like you kind of draw your belly in on an exhale? If you really think about it, the belly kind of goes in. That action in the belly actually travels up to the brain and tells the brain to dial down the stress response and starts to inhibit those stress hormones from happening. So we don't always have to think our way out of stress. Simply taking enough slow, deep breaths sends a message from the body up to the brain and takes that temperature down. So very often we think that it has to be some sort of mental thing, but there's a way to physically put the brakes on the stress response. And the breath is a fantastic way to do it. But you have to train it a little bit. I want to give one caveat because I feel like there might be someone really anxious listening. If you're very, very anxious and you say breathing practices don't work for me and they make me more anxious, it happens. It's totally understandable. There can be a process of reverse breathing for people who take a big breath in and they go, and their belly goes in and their chest goes out. And when they exhale, they push their belly out. And it's the body has actually gotten into sort of a locked stress response. So they breathe in this reversed fashion. And for them, trying to take a deep breath can actually trigger more panic and more anxiety. You can totally overcome that. You can find a nice yoga teacher, a meditation teacher. There's wonderful things online. It can totally be reversed. But if you're like, breathing practices don't work for me, don't tell me to breathe. There's ways around that. Gradually over time, you can release that. But I really don't want anyone to feel like they're breathing wrong if it makes them more nervous, because that happens. That'll just be part of something for you to gradually let go and shift to a healthier pattern. So please, it can absolutely be shifted. You just might need a little someone else to kind of put an arm around you and give you some tips to help undo that.
You touched on it a little bit, and I know you said that there's no easy ways of solving a helmet fire, but my next question is going to be, but if there was, whether it be from the perspective of the candidate or to steal one of Chris's questions, a role as a DPE who is seeing this in a candidate of which he wants to have succeed, like what are some of the options that are available in a short-term helmet fire type situation that either Chris or a potential applicant could use as a break the glass because I need help?
Totally. And these are the ones, honestly, that I use because I've been doing this stuff for 36 years. And why do you think I teach it? Because I need to continually remind myself, would you do these things? They are good for you. There's a couple of ideas, and I know everyone finds something for themselves. For a lot of people, a slow, deep breath works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. For me, sometimes what works well is I have to count my breaths. Otherwise, I'll go slow, deep breath is it's ridiculous. It will not be a slow, deep breath. So I will make myself count in for 4, hold it for 2, and exhale for 6, hold it out for 2. So it's in, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. And just the counting enough sometimes is enough for my brain to do to have me calm down. That's usually when I'm on the ground. I don't find it very helpful when I'm flying to try to do all of that. When I'm having a moment and I'm actually flying and I'm finding myself getting a little like the plane, I'm getting behind the plane or something, a really simple thing sometimes for me is literally just to wiggle my toes and tap my feet and be like, oh, I feel my feet. Look at that. It sounds silly, Why does it work? It works because very often we get caught in, I'll call them thought loops, right? Our brain is spinning. The mind can seem very abstract, and we forget that the mind sits in this biological organism called the body. We literally become like disembodied or disconnected. And it literally triggers the nervous system then to recognize, I'm a whole being here flying a plane. There's my feet. They're all the way down there. And it gets us into the present moment. Interestingly enough, Mace Curran, this wonderful fighter pilot, I just saw her on Instagram the other day. She says, yeah, when I was flying maneuvers and things would get really dicey up there, she's flying along at however fast she's going, I would wiggle my feet and wiggle my toes to help me when I started to feel myself getting super stressed out. I'm like, if it's good enough for Mace Curran, I must be onto something. In terms of DPEs, right? You're not going to be like, oh, dear applicant, could you please wiggle your feet and take a deep breath? Like they might think you're a little nuts. So, Chris, I think you're doing the exact right thing. Get them talking about times and things that reminds them of their confidence. Ask them about what they love. Ask them what they love about flying. Did you ever take a favorite flight? You know the way in to sort of the applicant that you're talking about. Who's your favorite instructor and why? This does a couple of things. Number one, it's reminding them of that connection that you said is so important for people to feel that sense of competency. Number two, when people speak, it starts to regulate their heart rate and their breathing pattern because they're forced to exhale as they are talking. And the more they talk, the more they're exhaling. And the more that vagus nerve stimulation is happening without even thinking about it. That's why talking with friends sometimes feels good. It's a physiological response to the breathing pattern. The other piece of it, too, is that you're reminding them in that emotional center of the brain of a time in which they felt connected, where they had autonomy, and they had competence, because those are the three things people need in order to feel successful. And when I think of a check ride, the instant thing I think of is, oh my gosh, am I going to be good enough? How am I going to do? Like the autonomy and the competence and the connection goes right out of the window. So if DPs can find ways to remind people subtly without being like, you're so competent, yay, but get them talking about times and areas or what they do for work where they have that sense of autonomy, competence, and connection, then that creates that wonderful positive feedback loop in their brain. And they're already going to be then talking to you from that place rather than from a place of lack and needing to prove something. So very simple things you can do to really address the human being that is flying the machine.
A couple of things there. You mentioned the helmet fire type situation, and us pilots, John, can relate to is a lot of times when stuff comes up, we're told to wind the watch, to sit back a little bit. Is it the act of, per se, stepping back, distracting ourselves with winding the watch, per se, or is it more so the breathing, that inhale and exhale? Or are we doing essentially the same thing, just using the different technique?
I think anytime we encourage our minds to pause, that is the sauce. John also said to me once, is it a 1 sip of coffee problem or a 2 sip of coffee problem? And I love that. I actually remember that when I fly, because that is the crucial thing. And they teach us all the time in yoga. And my friends who are devout Buddhists and Taoists talk about it as well. That is the pause that is the power, because we are giving ourselves in that pause a chance to accurately assess what is happening instead of action and reaction and then getting caught in this loop. It's the moment of pause helps us to see more clearly. And this is where the neuroscience of how our brains works comes in a little bit. I will try to keep this very thumbnail version, but at any given moment, our brains are processing infinitely more information than we are ever even aware of. There's wonderful books on this. I'll try to remember to link Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, in the notes if you want to read a whole book on this. But our brains are processing so much information, and sometimes we'll have that feeling like we're being watched and we don't know where it's coming from, and then we turn and someone's looking at us. Well, that's because your auditory field caught that up and your brain is interpreting it, but your thinking part of your brain, the cerebral cortex, is so freaking slow that it's going to never even get you the information that, hey, Timmy's standing over there in the corner, but your brain is actually seeing that information. So the pause, and we also have that same thing happens with auditory stimuli. Most of us are more echo thinkers. We don't know we are, but a lot of us hear someone say something and right away we replay it in our head, and that's what we're actually listening to. It happens so fast we don't even know we're doing it. So the pause is crucial. especially in an airplane where so much is coming in. It allows the brain to process it, but importantly allows the cerebral cortex, the thinking part that is going to direct our motor planning of what we're going to do, a moment to assess what has actually happened. Our brains are incredible. And sometimes they need processing time. They don't need us to do more pushing and pulling. They need us to pause so that we can react appropriately.
So that pause helps clarify, maybe even in the case of when we're doing the ground and the question's asked, maybe to repeat that question. Would that serve the kind of the same
Possibly.
purpose of that gives that pause in there?
Possibly, sometimes even silence. I like to do, as for myself as a teacher, I love to do a lot of like nonverbal silence, because sometimes if I'm a teacher and I ask a question and I see the kid is like processing, thinking, if I'm just sitting there staring at them, then it induces more stress.
Sure.
But I'll just do something like I'll have a sip of coffee or subtly turn my body away, be very non-threatening, or reach down and get something off the floor. I don't need to. I'm literally just doing it to back off of that pressure of like looming over them to like play that again, and just literally creating an environment where there is a bit more space, if that makes sense.
It does. One of the other techniques that I've used, and I've done this for years, was the mantra when I can sense that things are tightening up with the individual that I'm flying with, is relax, breathe. If things are going a little bit more stressful, relax, breathe. Fly the airplane in kind of that tone.
Yeah.
Just don't jump up, but using a set tone and a relaxed breathe. And you can watch them take their hand off the yoke or the helicopter or the cyclic or the collective and release that grip a little bit. And you see them kind of do this a little bit. Okay, that every once in a blue moon, I'll have somebody that says, I don't need to hear that. It's every once in a blue moon. Is there another alternative to the relax and breathe that I could maybe say, or just, hey, be quiet and let them relax and breathe on their own definitions?
Don't tell me to relax.
That's how I took it.
I'm just curious. Did you have the sense that those folks needed to relax? Is that why you were saying it?
It's usually in the pattern, or I can sense the tightness. And usually the telltale signs is they got the yoke grip.
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with that.
I tease people that are flying Cessnas because on the back grip, they got the little finger marks. I said, those all used to be smooth. It's all you students pilots squeezing that plastic so tight. And
I may do that on occasion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all do it on occasion. And if it's just like set back, relax, breathe, take a breath, or, we're kind of all repeating the same things now, but maybe some more of it, and realizing that these tools are available to the student to recognize that, okay, I'm getting a little tense here. How can I reset?
Yeah. It's so interesting what you said, that the folks that you were really telling it to, and then you came up with a little resistance. Don't tell me to relax, basically. Being a yoga teacher, I've heard that many times. And in fact, it's usually the people who are so tightly wound, they come into my class, like ready to hate the whole thing. And we'll laugh about it, many, many classes later as they kind of let that guard down. It can be very threatening for people, particularly anyone who's either grown up with trauma or they've grown up in a high pressure family household where relaxing was seen as being lazy, or taking it easy is seen as not being serious. People have a lot of psychological constructs that to be relaxed and take it easy means something about their capability. And very often those messages come from the family of origin that it's just not okay. It's not okay if you take a day off. It's not okay if you ease back. It's going to mean that you're not a serious or capable person. So a lot of times that conditioning, if we tell someone like that to relax, they don't hear it as an invitation to just be themselves. They hear it as a threat to, I'm not going to be able to perform. It's kind of puncturing their ego that's getting them through the moment. So that's where a lot of times for us yoga teachers, sometimes I feel a little icky telling people just to take some breaths and it's going to be okay, because there are many, many occasions where I teach folks breathing practices and they end up in tears. and it would not be the people that you would expect, because it's getting through some layers of social posturing and armor that people have to put on to survive sometimes very difficult situations. So if you're one of those folks who it's not going to work for, it's not going to work for you in that moment. It's going to feel like a threat. So in those kind of moments, you go with humor, you go with you're doing great, or you just back out of the way and just let them be themselves, because Chris, you're a DPE. There's only so much you can do. I think everything you're doing, though, is you're really setting the stage for just a calm, neutral, supportive environment. And I think that's fantastic. I love that you're telling people to get a good night's sleep the night before. How many days before a check ride are you usually in touch with a candidate?
Oh, that varies. Yeah, sometimes the candidates call me directly and we'll schedule the date. Like I had one today. He's 2 weeks out. We had a nice little talk today. A couple of schools, they quite literally will assign the applicant to me with 24 hours notice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because one thing I hear from a lot of people is like that whole lack of sleep thing. We're talking about taking down the temperature in a more global way, or at least a slightly longer term way than just right at the moment. Okay, the pressure's on. Now let's do a technique that's going to help you relax. I hear from a lot of people that it's the night before sleep, like can't sleep and they're this and that. So that's where we had, talked before about doing a guided relaxation that can be incredibly, incredibly useful technique where you're sort of guiding yourself. You're not necessarily sleep, you're not necessarily awake, and it can be fantastically restorative. And they're doing amazing studies with it now, showing that 15 minutes of that practice, if you train at it and get kind of decent at it, is equal to 3 hours of deep sleep, which is amazing. If you're not sleeping the night before a check ride, at least you can do this technique and know that you're getting some neurological rest. So you've got that little bit extra in the tank. So that would be something super cool to be able to send to people. If this gentleman you're in touch 2 weeks ahead of time, to be like, well, the Calm Cockpit has a bonus episode you could check out.
Absolutely.
Also, we had, absolutely. There's other resources. There's other people who lead them. If they don't like my voice, we can send them other resources as well. It doesn't hurt to try it. And if you don't like it, doesn't work for you, you lost nothing. And along with that, I think a very short and centering practice that is very simply, it's just like a 5-point reset. It's a 5-point posture reset. It's not necessarily a relaxation, because we don't want someone at a check ride, again, being a limp noodle, but just a 5-point physical reset. I teach all my music students it. I teach all my yoga students it. Something you can do standing in line at the grocery store to reset the physical posture, which helps to downregulate the stress response. And a few deep breaths. That goes a long way to being a little sort of back pocket tool you have to help the whole nervous system reset. So those are little bonus episode thingies we could do. People could play with them, see what they think, see if they work.
Use them as a get out of jail hack. You know how I love those.
When I hit bottom, I go to my recordings of my guided relaxations. Most days I can lead myself through it, right? I can just think of it. But when I'm really struggling, I'm just like, just hit play on the video. Somebody help me, because it really makes a profound difference.
As an industry, we need to kind of address this all the way, not just for stress, for check ride day, but for my purposes, starting this out a few weeks out, getting the industry would be best for everybody. But starting a couple weeks out, trying to get them to regulate, become more aware of this as they're going on, getting up to the check ride. And then when they're actually physically in the check ride themselves, realizing the techniques of breathing a little bit, pausing a little bit to let themselves kind of reset and be in the moment and get their brain back focused and not distracted from it. That is really important. That'll help and drive this thing down a little bit.
You're a great student. You got it. You summarized it beautifully. Just as you were saying that, it just makes me think of what I would tell someone is that, like, your brain is a precious asset and it should be treated leading up to the check ride with just as much care as you're training the maneuvers. The brain and the body, they're an asset that you're training along with that steep turn. So having someone like you telling people that is really empowering, because they might be on the fence of like, oh, should I be spending time doing things like that? But having you say, hey, listen to this relaxation so you're getting that neurological rest overnight, it kind of gives people permission that this is something that's going to elevate their performance. It's not just a thing that a yoga teacher said once because it's nice. It actually is an element of high performance training. So I applaud you for being willing to sort of advocate for that, because it's with the brains of the pilots, without that, not much else is happening, but not a lot of people are giving pilots permission and sort of really that support support to really treat it like that. And you're one of those people doing it. So I appreciate that.
I guess I did have one other question for the
Yeah.
actual check ride. A lot of these places where I go, they quite literally put us in what I call a prison cell for these
Yes.
check rides. Cement
Yeah.
walls, windows that are way up here, and we can't see out.
Yep.
What kind of guidance would you kind of give for that to help kind of lighten this up? Because I can, in some places, influence this a little bit.
We're going to feng shui the whole, we need some plants and some water in the background. It's so funny. I was just talking to a student the other day about that because they want me to come and teach in a daycare for at-risk kids. I'm like, well, that's great, but what room are you going to put us in? Because a lot of times, same thing. They put us in this really noisy room and the janitor comes through and is cleaning the room while the child is on the floor doing a deep relaxation. I mean, it's just, oh my goodness. So what can you do? I was thinking about this today, particularly at the private pilot level. I think it's different than like what you're doing, John. John, you're getting into a big fancy kit and flying for hours. But for a private pilot, we're not used to sitting and being asked that many questions for that long period of a time. And I've noticed even in training, I'm like, man, they keep us sitting for hours and we never take a freaking break, especially private pilots coming in. They haven't trained to be able to sit for 4 or 5 hours and just be grilled. Not that it's that long, but you know what I mean? So I think even sometimes just permission, like 30 minutes in, hey, it's been 30 minutes. If you've been doing a nice job or whatever, maybe longer, let's take 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. I'm just going to walk to the end of the hall and back. You do whatever you want. Not a big, long thing. Doesn't have to interrupt the flow. But for me as a teacher, I can see how people come back from a little body break. Oh, thank God. It just like lets them move around a little bit. In terms of the space itself, I mean, I don't know. Can you get some incense and candles in there? No, I'm kidding.
The applicant comes to me. I have an office in a hangar, and it's basically a man cave.
Nice.
And I've got 2 old airline seats over there on the left.
Love it.
I got a couch and a wooden table. I got 2 windows and pictures and stuff on airplanes and books and whatever.
Yeah.
The results, the comments I get from people there is, this is cool. That's what I want. I'd rather do a check ride with my feet, with my butt sitting on a couch and my feet on my table.
Totally.
And have them kind of get it rather than sitting at, at best, a conference room with a couple of nice leather chairs at a conference room. But even if they could decorate up these prison cells that we do for the ground stuff would be much more helpful. And you made something there with the water thing. Well, that would be cool. I don't have a water thing, but every once in a while I was doing a multi-engine check ride a week and a half ago, and we had an F-35 doing pattern work. I'm like, break time.
Everybody go run out and look at the plane.
We did.
Awesome. I love it.
I had it one time where I was at Recurrent at Flight Safety, and I don't know, I think it was like a Saturday morning check ride, and we're walking down the little sort of aisleway in between simulators going to the exam room, and next thing you know, you hear the examiner and he's playing like Final Countdown or something through a little boombox, and like that did sort of break the stress. Like, yeah, it was fun. You walk in, you're like, what in the world is going on? And this guy's just rocking out.
I like that guy because I usually get the guy that plays the Jeopardy music.
Oh no. Final Countdown is much better.
Yeah, it broke the tension right away. So that was fun. You know, guys, I think as we're winding things down, I mean, we've summarized this a few times, but I think that there's a couple key points here that we can bring, and that's everyone's stressed out on a check ride. And as we've stated, everyone's stressed out because they really want to do well. Like if you had no stake in the game, there'd be no reason to be stressed. So I think it's important to remember for everyone out there, like just accept the fact that you want it and go get it. And when it comes to DPEs, I think it's important to take the perspective from this that we have a DPE on this show because guess what? DPEs do want you to succeed. So take that and use Chris as the shining example of DPEs who are sitting there going, how do I make this a pleasant experience for somebody? They have to be graded. And unfortunately, there are some times where we don't always rise to the level that we need to, but it's not the end of the world. And Chris is here to try to give you the environment to where you can do the best that you can. And I truly believe that with the network of DPEs that we have out there in the system, that there are more like Chris than aren't. And so for those of you out there, Gita included, gonna get ready for whatever check ride that you're preparing for at whatever level. It's just another person who wants to see you have a good day. And don't forget that. And I think it's important also that we can have a little calm cockpit experiment here. Now, we've talked so many times about all the things that we're going to experiment on me for, and we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that. But I think now is the time for us to experiment on you. As Gita mentioned, I'm going to give Chris the full, credit for this. We have some bonus episodes coming out, and one of the things that Chris had brought to us was just the idea of using some of these things as a pre-check ride experiment to bring that tension down. So Gita's going to put together a few things, and we hope that maybe you'll listen to them and use that as part of your check ride prep. And then if you could, just let us know how it goes. Does it help? Hopefully we can get some information from Chris after a little while and find out if any of his applicants have tried it and what their feedback has been. But we always want this show to be actionable steps. And thankfully, with Gita's experience, I think that we can get some numbers here on some actionable things we can do.
Very cool. Love it.
I love people being successful. And like you said, John, I think a lot of DPEs, we want to bring this down. We understand we want you all to be successful. We want you to be happy and relaxed coming into it so you can perform your best and elated when you get done so you can go out and take your mom, dad, brother, sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever, your dog for a ride and have that a sense of accomplishment that you rightly so deserve, to go out there and have fun. Aviation's awesome. In my opinion, there's not a field like it. You don't realize until you can't do this how much you'll miss it. You get a break, a forced break, and you're like, oh man, this really sucks. But then you're back in it and this is awesome. And we want that response when you go flying. This is awesome every time.
Chris, thank you for being a part of the show and showing behind the curtain of the other side of the table on a check ride.
You're welcome.
Dearest listeners, I hope you got as much out of that interview as we did. And I find it so inspiring to have people like Chris here in the Calm Cockpit with us. It says so much about him that even with his decades of experience and 3,500 practical tests administered, that he's still looking for ways to learn and grow and collaborate.
Yeah, and it's really fun because when you think about pilots, and one of the reasons why we discovered that we wanted to do this podcast to begin with is we know that there's these issues out there. And we also know that the traditional ways of dealing with these issues aren't really working. I had a conversation with a former chief pilot and friend of mine, and he kind of said the same thing. He goes, I've been listening to your podcast. It's just something so different that no one else is doing. To have someone like Chris come on and talk about these issues and go, we have got to try something different. It's really kind of validating for what we're trying to accomplish here. We know that most pilots aren't going to be looking to breathing exercises and yoga and all of these other things, but maybe that's exactly what they need to be doing. I think we're finding that people have a lot more open minds than maybe we originally thought, and it's amazing.
I think we have nothing to lose in trying things like this. Obviously, I love it. I've made it a lifestyle. But for me, I feel like life is hard enough. It's hard enough. So why not try easy, try soft, and see what happens? Because you can always go back to the other hustle, grind if you want to. That's always available to you. So in these multiple conversations that we had with Chris, both on the episode and then I spoke with him leading up to it, we kept coming back to the idea you hear in that second half of the interview of providing something for people even beyond the conversation that we had, which I think the conversation in and of itself was tremendous. I say it all the time that there are no shortcuts to nervous system regulation and improved performance. However, there are simple things you can do that can make a profound change. So I do think that it does take us small bits of work done over a long period of time to really see results, but we wanted to really coalesce this information into 2 specific bonus practices. So look for those to drop. The first one is going to be an episode all about sleep. I mean, I just had a major life event, and in the week leading up to this event, my sleep was like waking up every couple hours, wake up. Oh, it's not time yet. Go back to sleep. Wake up. Go back to sleep. And I'm sure when I get right before the check ride the night before, I'm going to toss and turn. Do you toss and turn before a check ride or you sleep through?
I mean, now that I plug my bed sheets in, I sleep just fine.
You have your magical grounding bed sheets that are the cure for all wellness issues.
No, I struggle just like anybody else to get sleep before a major test like that. So yeah,
and I think it's just,
difficult.
we call it like you're excited and you're nervous. So it's like nervous-sighted. It's like both together. But we know that sleep is important and it can start to kind of play on our mind. So I'm going to be recording a bonus episode that is a guided relaxation. It's a technique we actually call Yoga Nidra. And, the modern scientists now, what do they call it? Non-sleep deep rest. That's fine. Whatever you call it, it's a systematic practice that helps us shift both our brain waves and our neurological functioning so that we are shifting into a more restful state. And the thing I love about it is that even if I don't fall back asleep when listening to one of these, I know that I perform better on the next day. A lot of times I feel like I did sleep, even though I never actually fully drifted off. So I'm going to record that nice, juicy 30-minute guided yoga nidra. We have another one that I'll link in the show notes that I did after our sleep episode that we did. And there was a bonus episode that dropped on March 12th that was called Want Great Sleep Tonight. It's a similar yoga nidra. I'll link that in the show notes. You can try that out. This one I'm going to record sort of with Chris's guidance is also a yoga nidra, but it uses a different technique. And some people like one technique over the other. It's all about finding what you like. I'm also going to link ones from Andrew Huberman because he does a great job leading them as well. And it's a different vibe, different feel. And you got to find one you like. Otherwise, if you're annoyed by the presenter or you don't want to listen to Gita, you prefer a male voice, it's not going to work. So I'm going to provide a few resources as well. The other bonus session is going to be this designed session for focus and center prior to the check ride. So for me, I'm thinking like when I get to flight school, I usually sit in the parking lot and for just a couple of minutes, I just center myself so that I'm in the right frame of mind from the moment I get out of the car. It can be very short, very sweet. Even if you've never done it before, what do you call it, John? It's the break in case of emergency thing. Like It's only 5 minutes. We don't need to be super relaxed. What we need to be is alert and focused. And my goal with creating these for you guys is for you to play with these, see if you like it. If it works, you keep it. You don't like it, no harm, no foul. Just leave it where it lies. So look for those bonus episodes to drop in the coming days. And wherever you are in your check ride prep, your recurrent training cycle, I would always encourage you to integrate any kind of mental performance training and or nervous system regulation training, whether it's meditation, breath work, Tai Chi, getting out in nature, exercise. Include that as part of your check ride prep. And if you're a CFI, you can be a great role model for your students by opening up these conversations. Share this episode with someone you know prepping for a check ride. And if you're a CFI, share it with your fellow CFIs. If you're a DPE, share it with your fellow DPEs. These are the kind of things that move the conversation forward on a more industry level, and we would love to be part of that conversation. Sharing positive information that makes life easier is always a boon. And sometimes having a personal recommendation from someone goes a long way towards making someone feel comfortable at trying something that otherwise before they might have a question mark of if it's for them or not.
Well, and if you're an examiner, if you're an instructor, if you're doing any kind of testing with students and you want to give this a try, we highly encourage you to do so. But we also encourage you to send us the results, because what we'd like to do at some point is to get a collection of information from across the country, from across different experience levels, and figure out how well is this working? Are there things that would work better so we can tweak it and make it better and tailor it towards flight instructor, flight student, pilot success. So with that, you can find us on all the social media accounts. Calm Cockpit Podcast. We appreciate you listening as always.
And until next time, as always, fly smarter
and stress less.
Boston Tower 1 departure is Airbus 321. Traffic holding crossing runway 33 left 3 lane.